Hi, welcome to Meeples on Meeples, episode 19. I'm Brian.
Andrew.
Adam.
Patrick.
Before we get started, we'd like to invite you to join us Meeples on Facebook, and please subscribe to our YouTube account so you can constantly get updates in our newest videos.
Our game of the week for this week is WhiteWater, a Raging Rapids River race. Basic description of it is it's a co-op racing game to some degree. It is competitive, but you also have to work together. The way it works is at the beginning of each game, each player is dealt 2 matching cards with a letter on them, A, B, C, D, E, or F. That's your raft. You then start with the youngest player, and he passes one of his matching cards to another player, and you keep going around until everybody ends up with...
And then I would take one of my C's and give it to someone else, and that person takes their letter.
And you end up in the end, so everybody has 2 different letters. You have 2 different rafts you're going to run. And the other person that has your corresponding letters is the person you're going to work with to get your boat from the starting line all the way to the finish line. To make matters a little more interesting, each person is also given a 1 and a 2 token. Now these tokens are assigned at the beginning of the game. You don't look at them again, you put them face down, but you put your 1 token on one raft and your 2 token on the other raft. The 2 token raft scores double if it crosses the finish line in first, second, or third place. First place is worth 3 points, second 2 points, third 1 point. So if you get your first place one across and it's your 2 boat, you get 6 points for it. So that kind of determines which boat you're going to put all your energy into. Controlling the boats, each player has 2 rafters. So there's a total of 4 rafters actually running each boat, but each player only controls 2 of them. You also have 3 energy points. The energy points are, I guess, a bunny with being struck by lightning. These points can be used on any raft. Your 2 rafter or action cards can only be used on the raft they're assigned to, but the energy cards can be used on any raft. So at your first turn, you could theoretically have 7 turns, 7 actions. But when it comes back around to you, while your action cards, your rafter cards automatically replenish, your energy cards do not. The only way you get these bunny cards back is if you spend one of your rafter cards to regain it. So you kind of have to balance, when you're going to move your raft forward or when you're going to spend a card to get an energy point back to maybe use on the other raft. From there, it's just a competitive game going down the river. There's a few things on the board, obstacles. You have snags. You have whirlpools, which are either red, blue, or black. You roll the corresponding dice, and it tells you what's going to happen. You can capsize your boat. You can throw a rafter out. It can cause the boat to turn, 1 degree or a full 180. And the whole point is just to get your boat from the starting line all the way to the finish line.
Get both your boats, hopefully.
Both your boats, hopefully, but most importantly is to get as we learned in the last game, get your 2 boat to the finish line, because that's the one that's going to, of course, score you the most points.
Yay!
And the only thing, as far as actions go, it's 1 action to move forward, it's 1 action to rotate your boat, and it's 1 action to regain one of your energy cards. The only 2 action things are either to get off a snag, or if you want to actually backpedal, go back up the river, you have to spend 2 actions. And I think that pretty much sums it up.
Okay.
One thing I do want to clarify, when you talk about your energy cards and saying that it can be used on any of your rafts, any of the rafts that you own, you cannot use your energy card to play on somebody else's raft. It is only the rafts that you own.
And the interesting thing with that too is you can actually use your energy cards or your rafter cards on the person that's sharing a raft with you too. So if you capsize your boat, for instance, you have to lock both of your cards, which means you can't use them at all. Well, the only way to unlock them is to spend energy cards. Well, let's say I'm sharing a boat with Pat, and he doesn't have any energy cards to unlock his cards on the raft that we're sharing. I can spend my energy cards to actually unlock them for him so that we can flip the boat back over and start going back down.
As long as you're sharing the boat together.
As long as you're sharing it, you can share energy cards or rafter cards.
All right, should we start talking about the components of the game?
Sure. The game, I think it's a cheap game. It's only like $28, I think, on Cool Stuff Inc. So you can't really expect a lot from it. It has a neat art style, but I think we'd all agree that it's kind of cheaply made.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the art itself, though.
Everything is cardboard.
It doesn't really look like... I mean, they're kind of blotchy. It doesn't really... They could have put a lot more definition to the rocks, the water,
The one thing I have to say is I don't mind the cheaply made game. I don't mind them using cardboard bits. That's fine with me. The one thing that I don't like is that the boards don't really match up. The artwork doesn't really match up real well on some of the boards, not all of them. On some of them, the artwork, the hexagons don't really line up as they're supposed to.
They're a full 1/4 inch on some of them, so sometimes the boards will be just completely off.
The one thing I do think, I'm a geek for dice. I like the dice that actually have the engraved dice. It's not painted on. It's not screen painted. It's not stickered. They're actually engraved dice, which means they're going to last longer, and you're not going to wear down the images on them, which is a bonus to this game. My biggest thing is just that the boards don't line up.
And the cards are serviceable. They're probably some of the cheaper cards you're going to get in any board game, though.
And they're a weird size. They're not normal card size, but they're not that tiny little Fantasy Flight specialized cards. They're just like this weird medium size.
And you can also see that we've played this a few times, but the cards are already showing some wear and tear from just light.
Yeah, and again, the art style on them isn't great.
Yeah, it's not spectacular.
I would recommend, sleeving them though, because you're constantly flipping them, and you got your hands on the same 7 or 8 cards.
They're going to get bent pretty easy.
Now, for a family game, this is a very, very light game, very friendly. So I can see the cartoonish appearance to it to appeal to young children.
I like the artwork. I'm going to disagree with Andrew. I like the fact that you've got the whirlpools. Everything's symbol.
Yep.
Everything's a symbol.
I like the symbols.
Language
and
independent. It's self-explanatory. This will rotate me this way. This will make me go that way.
You got a bunny digging out of the ground over here. I mean, you got some detail.
There's a bear on one of them.
It's very child friendly. The cartoony appearance to it will appeal to children, appeal to families. I think that's a benefit.
As far as the child friendly thing goes, the way you determine who does everything first, it's always the youngest player. Actually, it's directed, I think, to families with young kids. The young player is the one that starts off. The young player is the one that kind of gets the first choice.
And it's also cooperative and competitive, so you don't have the cutthroat that you have to some games.
I've got 2 more complaints about the board. One, whenever you have tiles, because you can move them around and make many different tracks. Okay, double-sided. You could have twice the track possibilities just by printing on the back side.
They missed a lot of opportunities.
Problem number 2, interlocking. Come on, how hard is it to make them interlock?
It'll raise your price.
And the other
I
thing,
think $5 more for that.
I'm just curious why they hired Bob Ross to do the artwork.
It's kind of hard to hire Bob Ross. He's been kind of gone for a while now, but
and the other thing is it goes to that double-sided thing, is there's actually only one start tile. You're going to use the same start tile with the same obstacles all the time because it has the starting line on it. So it would have been nice to at least have a double-sided one there so you could get a different starting panel with different obstacles every once in a while instead of playing the same thing.
But my thought, and this is just thought, being a family game, having repetition and having things laid out isn't necessarily a bad thing, especially with young children.
Yeah.
I mean,
So they can remember.
so they can remember, so they can understand how things go. So I can see this as a older gamer. Obviously, we'd like to see more, but with younger gamers,
Some of
young
them are much
family,
older.
Much older gamers.
But they do have advanced
In our
rules
Twilight
too for
years.
more
Yes.
adult play.
And we
Yeah.
didn't cover any of those, the advanced rules. There's an advanced version for this for a more adult.
Yeah, you
older
can go into that, and it gets a lot more complex. You actually lose paddles that you have to throw out in the water. You have to recover them. You lose rafters that you actually have to recover. I mean, it can be a really in-depth, complicated game, but the base one is a good family game.
Should we go into strategies then, since we're kind of talking about in-depth and more complicated?
Strategy, first of all, it is good for 3 players to...
It's actually 2 to 6.
Or 2 to 6.
2?
Yeah, 2 to 6.
So you just would...
You play, I think, double the boats. I can't remember for sure.
Yeah, I would say you'd almost have to.
Yeah. 2 to 6. I would suggest 4 or above. We played a quick 3-player game once, and one boat always turns out to be the giver.
Yeah, which means one of the 3 players just gets screwed. They're going to be left behind. I mean, we did one. It was an extra length, and one of the longest runs you could do. And by the time the 2 were crossing down here, the one that was going to end up in 3rd place was still on the first panel because everybody was spending those raft cards to get their energy back to move their number 2 boat across the finish line. So there's one player that just kind of got left in the dust.
Or one
Pretty
boat. Not 2 players. But
2
one
players
boat.
were attached to that boat, but that one
But
boat got...
I would definitely say 4 on up because with 4 players it was a closer game.
Couldn't you make a house roll? I mean, there's 6, so if you have 3, couldn't you add in the extra 3 to make it
You
more...
could do double the boats.
I mean, yeah, it would take
do something
longer,
like that,
but
yeah.
I mean, that would make it more to where one person isn't
necessarily going to get the short end.
Another strategy I'm going to throw out there is it does kind of help and pay off to look ahead. And there are certain places, like right here, you cannot avoid the whirlpools, but you can go for the lesser of the evils. Like, okay, I'm going to aim so I hit the blue because the red is worse than the blue. Or look who's ahead of you and when is an opportune time, because if you come up behind them, you can bump them into the next spot. So you can try to bump them into snakes, bump them into...
Bump them into a black whirlpool.
Yeah, so at
Bump
the
them to a
rocks.
win.
Yeah, bump them to a win.
Thank you, that was nice, yeah. But it does kind of pay to look ahead a little bit and think ahead. which is kind of nice. That adds that little extra bit of strategy.
Yeah,
As
it
I'm
does.
behind, but it actually might be advantageous to hold back to kind of get them caught up in like a little alcove or
was
stuck
that
on
what
the rocks.
you were doing last
That's-
game?
I don't want to talk about it.
Another strategy is probably pretty obvious. There's going to be a lot of table talk with the person you're sharing boats with, because you're going to want to be able to maybe try to convince them, okay, you need to be dedicating your attention down here. That boat's going to be fine. We need to be working on this one. You got to really kind of balance with the person you're in the boat with who's going to be spending what.
And then you
on
have
that
to
boat.
hope that they've put their number
There
two
too on it too.
On your number.
You'll find out pretty early.
Yeah, and that's something that you don't show anybody when you put it face down. Only you know, and you can't, like you said, you can't look again.
And sometimes even you don't know.
Sometimes you forget which one. There's that honest mistake happens once in a while. I'd say it's pretty light on strategy overall, though.
That's about
I mean,
it,
just
yeah.
kind of know the layout of the board. There's a little luck involved with the dice.
But it's not dice
and
control.
who your partner is and where they're putting their priorities. So a lot of it's kind of out of your hands.
Careful who you trade your cards with. That's
No, it does come down to that.
Yeah, and I would say luck on the dice. It's mainly basically just how to play the cards. The dice comes in it comes in. The dice comes in occasionally, but not frequently. It's not the big decider of the game, really. It's more of how
I don't know,
relationship
because all
goes.
these whirlpools here, all those dice,
Yeah.
that we were ahead at the end, and we ended up coming in second because of the dice.
because you tried to
Look
take
at
the
it was
shortcut
dice here,
across.
dice here, dice here, dice here.
They tried to keep the
Yeah,
shortcut
but
across
the
four
dice,
whirlpools.
the dice came because of our decision.
You gotta be a
So it
risk
wasn't-
taker. Gotta be
yeah.
a risk taker.
The dice came because of our decision, not.
Yeah, you can
not
really
determine
kind of,
decision.
to a certain degree. There's some spots where you can't, but to a certain degree, you can kind of control when you're going to
Yeah.
roll.
And when you're going to get the dice. So it's not really an overwhelming part of the luck.
But there are times when it does pay off to take the whirlpool because it is a shorter route.
Much shorter.
And if you get a lucky roll, it may not really have that big of an impact overall on you after all.
So how about likes and dislikes? Anything in particular before we get into our reviews that you really want to kind of throw
I
out
like
there?
the theme.
Yeah,
We played
I think it's
we've
fun.
actually reviewed even a lot of racing games in the
Yeah.
short time we've been reviewing games, and the idea of whitewater rafting, how the arrows when you sometimes you automatically get pushed forward because you're going you can even see the waterfall and the white water that you're hitting. Whirlpools and things make sense. The rocks make sense how they would slow you down or snag you and tie you up.
I like it that it's a competitive racing game or a cooperative racing game where you actually
I do
have
like
to
that.
work with the person that's in the
You have to
boat
work with
you.
two separate people,
Yeah,
actually.
exactly.
Because the one that guy I'm sharing with, and I'm sharing with that person over there, and that's
Yeah.
kind of cool.
I like the family friendliness of it. It's easy to play. It's visual. It's easy to understand what's happening on the board.
Mm-hmm.
I really like the idea that they put that first with the theme rather than just making another racing game.
What about you, Andrew?
One thing that I dislike is that you have the starting. I wish there was some sort of finish tile instead of just you're off the
It
board.
just pours off the board.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, I feel like I'm going into a waterfall and I lose either way.
I think all my dislikes come down to components, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would probably agree.
I mean, there's some things about
Gameplay
the
is
game.
so simple that it's hard to dislike it.
I would not buy that because of the components. I wouldn't say that components.
No,
but
take away
that's
from
the
it, but
low
I
part of the
agree
game.
that that's
it's not
the weakest
terrible.
part.
It's disappointing. I'd use that word rather than.
But again,
they're bad.
it was $28.
Yeah, for the price
Yeah.
you're getting it
I mean-
for, it's not a bad component.
I have one more like, and that's the play time. I don't know what it says on the box, but you can play a 4-player game in about 45 minutes, maybe an hour.
45 to that's exactly what it says. 45
Really?
to 60
Oh.
minutes.
The 3-player game can go even faster than that actually.
What's the
so-
age on it, too?
8 and up. So it's one of the
Right.
younger games that we've
right.
And I can see an 8-year-old playing this. It's not overly complicated.
And I can see even a little bit younger than that playing that with assistance, from from the people that help. So
All right, should we move on to the
the
reviews?
reviews.
1 to 10, you can figure out 1 is bad, 10 is really good. So Andrew, where are you at?
4
A 4? Why is that?
plus a 3.
So I'm
Okay,
gonna
so-
go ahead and say
I was gonna say you didn't have that much bad to say.
No,
that finish line thing just killed him.
it did. I'm sorry. It's just, that's a killer. No, there is a few things like I wish there was a finish line. I know it's a cheaper game, but artwork doesn't necessarily cost a lot of money unless you're paying somebody buku dollars to do the artwork because you're just printing it either way. What costs money is is the actual thickness and the type of cardboard, things like that. It doesn't even look cartoony. Like I said, it kind of looks like Bob Ross, which it's a little bland to me. Otherwise, if I would have given it an 8.
If you don't mind
happy
me
trees.
jumping in here, just kind of show you one problem with the artwork. These are boards that fit together, and because you can throw them together at any, there's a lot of different combinations. These boards don't even fit with the art. You got half a tree on one board and nothing on the other.
Right. It just the artwork does
I
not
didn't even
do it
notice
for
that
me.
actually.
Yeah.
And
Half
being-
a rock over here.
Being a water rafting game, I mean the water is just basically blue with a little bit of white in it. It's not really pleasing to the eye, but that's the only thing I didn't like about it. The gameplay itself was a lot of fun. Lots of table talk. I always love when there's plenty of table talk because it really keeps you engaged. You really have to be watching what the other people are doing too. You can't just sit back and not pay attention.
Well, and because on two people's turn, they are having an impact on your boat because they're controlling your boat on their turn too. So you do actually, I agree, stay in gameplay
Right,
the whole
you stay
time
very
around.
focused, and I mean, there's enough strategy to keep you drawn into the game to where you're not like, okay, but you're always kind of thinking one step ahead, even if you're not in that turn or whatever, you're not your boat. But I give it a solid 7 just because the artwork just wasn't quite doing it for me, and didn't interlock small things, but it was a lot of fun to play. I definitely buy it.
I think I'm actually going to go at a 7 too. I was between a 7 and a 7.5. It's a lot of the same reasons Andrew gave. It's fun to play. The actual gameplay experience is good. Like I already said, a lot of its components. Artwork, maybe not so much for me, but the fact that you don't have double-sided boards, the fact that the boards are pretty thin and cheap, the cards are very thin and cheap, the fact that the boards don't line up correctly, it's just little things like that kind of take away from the experience. But otherwise, it's just a lot of fun. I like games that keep you engaged, like you said. I like cooperative games a lot too, and the fact that this throws a little competition in there is great. I don't really have a whole lot else to add about it. There's not a lot to dislike about it. It's very simple, very cheap. It's just, for me, like I said, the components.
I'm gonna triple up on that 7. It's kind of in a crowded genre with racing games. Even in our group, we own several racing games. The theme and the partnering up idea is enough to make it above average. It's different from a lot of the crowd. But if we were to say, I'm in the mood for a racing game, I think I would play Pitch Car over this. I think I would pick Formula D over this because of the nicer components, and there's a different type of strategy, but it gives more of a feel of racing. Because
Formula D.
Yeah, I pick Formula D.
That piece of trash?
I think I would. So it's better than average. It's better than a lot of games out there. It's better than a lot of racing games even out there because of that theme and that family friendliness. But there are better racing games than certainly other games. So 7's a fair review.
I'm between a 6.5 and a 7. I'll probably go 7. Great family game, simplistic. It's a good. You only have a few minutes left to play a game. Throw it down, play it real quick. The components are okay for what it needs to be, and the setup is easy. The tear down is easy, which is a big thing with some racing games. Sometimes that takes a little bit more time to do. So I think a 7 is a fairly decent number to give this for those reasons.
Sounds pretty consistent.
Yeah, 7's
Hey, is this 2 weeks in a row that we've all had
It's the same score, yeah.
I wasn't here last week. I wasn't here last week, so I can't say.
Yeah.
I mean, of the 4 reviews.
Yeah, I think it is.
So
Pretty good. Okay, well that's about it for this week.
What are we doing next week?
Next week I think it's Codwell City of Thieves is what we're going to be reviewing.
Another good game.
So tune in next time.
Game next week.
Number 45.
Okay, what is our game next week?